And good afternoon. Welcome to Life Unrehearsed. My name's Matt Delvecchio, specializing in life transitions, home care, and the senior living industry.
And I'm Corey Sirota, clinical social worker and psychotherapist specializing in grief and loss.
Coming right up on the first half of today's show, she overcame breast cancer and started a company that helps cancer patients in treatment and in recovery. You're not going to want to miss Joy Rogers' Joyful Packages story. Joy will be joining us shortly. Just before that, Corey, I have to make mention, you have been on a roll and a couple of webinars. You've got a big one coming up with L'Appui, a wonderful organization that supports caregivers, don't you?
That's correct. They have asked me as part of their outreach to do English workshops. A couple of our colleagues, Stephanie Erickson, for example, is doing a few, and I will be doing something on comforting the mourner, both on March 21st at 1 p.m. Virtually and March 22nd at 10 a.m. And I believe they're free, so we can put the links onto our Life Unrehearsed website for people to register, although registration is limited.
That would be a good idea, though. We could hear a little background there. I don't know if you could hear me there. What do we have coming up on the second half?
Oh, coming up on the second half, we are going to talk about seniors and technology. We're going to talk about how technology is actually helping seniors and their families live healthier, safer, and happier lives. That's with Mark Saltzman, and that's coming up after the 3:30 news.
Yeah, Mark is just amazing, very interesting, and you might know him through Tech Talk. So that's going to be coming up, and looking forward to that. All right, Corey, go ahead with who we got coming up with Joy.
Yes, we're going to be speaking to Joy Rogers, and Joy is on the line right now, I believe. Joy's a mother of 2 children. She was diagnosed with triple-negative invasive breast cancer shortly after her 35th birthday. Since being diagnosed, Joy has been a big advocate for cancer awareness as a whole, and so much so that in 2018, she launched Joyful Packages, which sells cancer care packages for patients in treatment and in recovery, as well as packages for caregivers. Talk about making lemonade out of lemons. We're very excited to talk with her. Welcome to Life Unrehearsed, Joy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Joy, let's start off with, it was a big term. Let's break it down. What is triple-negative invasive breast cancer?
Okay, so triple-negative means that it's not fueled by hormones or protein. It tends to spread and grow faster and can be trickier to find kind of the right cocktail to treat it. I had 16 chemotherapies where some breast cancers are treated with 4 or 6 or even no chemo at all. The invasive part means that it has gone into my breast tissue. The majority of breast cancer starts in the nipples and the milk ducts, and so mine did not. Mine was in my actual breast tissue.
Joy, I can't imagine. Diagnosed at 35 years old, you had 2 young children. As you mentioned, 16 chemotherapy treatments. You had a double mastectomy, and that was followed by a hysterectomy a couple of months after that. Unbelievable.
Exactly.
How did you get through this? What was the motivation to get through this?
It was definitely my kids. The idea of them seeing a sick and dying mom was never in the cards for me. No matter how sick I would feel, I would always get up, I'd put on my wig, I would draw my eyebrows on, drive my kids to school. I tried to keep their lives as normal as possible. They were very young. They were like 3 and 6 when I was diagnosed. So, it was so unfair for them to have to live with this. And so my husband and I and our parents really just did everything possible to make my kids' lives as normal as possible.
You're listening to the voice of Joy Rogers. She's a cancer survivor, and she now has founded the company Joyful Packages that helps cancer patients and caregivers. So, Joy, there's so many things I want to ask you, but let's go with, what advice would you give people who are in early stages of their diagnosis?
I would say the biggest thing, and I say this with any medical condition in life, is not to Google. Take a breath, trust your team. I had a good friend of mine who was diagnosed before I was. She actually was on vacation celebrating her own remission when I got diagnosed. And she told me just to breathe. And it really is just the simplest and the best piece of advice. Even to this day, I trust my oncologist more than I trust anybody in the entire world. You know, what many people don't realize is that, yes, you have an oncologist, but they work with a whole team. There's a whole, what they call the tumor board, where a whole bunch of doctors sit together, a whole bunch of oncologists sit together and plan your treatment, and they look at each and every case. So you have such an army behind you that just trust your oncologist, try and go with the flow. You know, when I 5 years ago Googled triple negative invasive breast cancer, the survival rates were so, I don't want to say they were low, but they were so much lower than other breast cancers. And of course, it scared me so much. And just don't Google, listen to your doctor. And, you know, my doctor had said to me right off the bat, like, you're going to go through a bad few months, but you're going to survive it, and you're going to, you know, have a story to tell. And it's just going to be a crummy few months, and that's it. And he was right. And, you know, of course, he's right about everything in life. And I still to this day call him with questions, whether it be, you know, even when the COVID vaccine first came out, I'm a healthcare worker. I was eligible to get it earlier than other people my age, even people older than me. And right away I called him, you know, are there any implications for cancer patients? And right away off the bat, he was like, nope, you go, you get it. And okay, that was the end of that discussion. You know, you really just have to put your trust in your oncology team and go with the flow.
I think it's great words of advice, because Dr. Google can just make things better, or most likely, like in your case, terribly worse. It creates and increases those anxiety levels, and like you say, go with the pros. No harm doing your research, but the more and more Google and the more information out there, it seems like everyone's an expert on every topic. So absolutely go with the professionals. You're listening to Life Unrehearsed with Matt and Corey, and that's the voice of Joy Rogers, who sells cancer care packages to patients in treatment and in recovery, as well as for their caregivers. Joy, cancer, when we've had guests in the past that have had cancer, it changes everyone, and I think everyone has a different perspective on it. And so I'd like to ask you, Joy, how has cancer changed you?
It changed me both physically and emotionally. Physically, between the meds and the chemo and the hysterectomy, I've gained 30 pounds. Before cancer, I was in such crazy shape. So, I have the extra weight. My body aches a little more. Emotionally, it played a huge toll on my anxiety. I feel still to this day, I feel most comfortable at home in my own surroundings. I'd rather order in dinner instead of go out for dinner. And I also feel a little bit awkward meeting new people. I am very much a people person, but at the same time, when I meet someone new, I feel like I almost have this dark secret until they know my story and they know that I'm a cancer survivor. I almost feel like I'm hiding such a huge part of who I am. So definitely, both physically and emotionally, it has taken a toll.
Well, I appreciate your candor with that. I can't imagine how it could not. And talking about how it's changed you, I have met various, as Matt said, we've interviewed, and I personally have met many people that have struggled and survived cancer. And one of the things that they talk about, and I was curious as it is how it is for you, is this fact of every pain, every itch.
Yeah.
What's that like? Is that a fair statement to say?
It definitely is. There's many times that I've reached out to my oncologist with various, new aches, new pains. I mean, I was at my oncologist's office 2 days ago and again brought up some things, and without hesitation, he will, run a whole slew of new blood tests, CT scans if needed, ultrasounds if needed, bone scans. So I try not to panic. I know that he's on top of things, and we do my blood tests often enough. And, as soon as I tell him something doesn't feel right, he's really on the ball at looking at it. So I don't really have the chance to stress about it too much because my doctor is just so on top of it.
Right. And it gives you that peace of mind that's needed. Now, Joy, we have to head out to traffic, but when we come back, we're going to talk about joyful packages, and I think this is such a smart idea, Joy, that you've come up with, and different ideas depending on the circumstances. So we're going to hear about all these packages.
Welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. I'm Corey Sirota with Matt Del Vecchio, and we are talking with Joy Rogers, cancer survivor, who is the founder of Joyful Packages. She makes these packages are for patients in treatment and in recovery, as well as for their caregivers. Joy, this is such an incredible initiative. I want to hear more about it. Let's talk about the different kinds of packages that you make. So let's start with the recovery.
Okay, so the recovery was actually the one that I started with when I thought up the idea. I wanted Joyful Packages to be a gift with a purpose. We often don't know what to do or how to help a loved one battling cancer. So I wanted these gifts to be the answer to that question. And so the In Recovery is, it has some fun mixed in with some function. There's a T-shirt, there's some high fiber gummy candies. There are also items like a logic puzzle book to get you out of that chemo fog, resistance bands to help you regain both, some physical strength. We have the In Treatment box, which goes for, whether you're starting chemo, whether you're starting radiation. And this one has items such as stress ball for neuropathy, ginger chews for nausea, a soft hat. We have the Young Warrior box, which is for children who are battling. There are some functional items in it, of course, but there's a lot of little toys and games. And this box, I like to fill as much as I can. I'm always stuffing all sorts of fun stuff in there. Finally, we have the Caregiver Box, and this is for the spouse or the parent of the cancer fighter. It has some sweets in it. It has a coloring book and just some items to make them feel appreciated and loved. And then I also actually recently added a small care package, which is at a lower price point. And it just has, some healthy goodies, a coloring book, just a few items, whether it's, wherever someone is in their treatment or in their recovery, just a little something to say, I'm thinking of you. And then we also have a line of accessories. So nipple tattoos, various headbands, jewelry, that kind of stuff, lashes, temporary lashes. So items that people could either buy on their own or add it to one of our packages.
That's the voice of Joy Rogers here on Life Unrehearsed with Matt and Corey. And Joy's a cancer survivor at 35 years old, diagnosed with breast cancer. In fact, invasive breast cancer. She had a double mastectomy. She had a hysterectomy. All this with 2 young children. And my goodness, Joy, talk about not only are you a survivor, I love that warrior name for the young warriors, and you created this organization called Joyful Packages, and you're just reviewing some of those packages. So I want to back up. I guess, when did you start or think about this initiative, and what triggered it?
So I had recently finished my last surgery. I was done with treatment, and I wanted to find a way to give back. I'm constantly participating in, all the walks and the runs and all the fun events, but I'm a caregiver by nature, just who I am. And I wanted to just find a way to give back. The packages are for purchase, but I'm not looking to get rich over them. The money earned gets donated to various cancer charities, or I sent boxes to underprivileged. So it's really just kind of my way of giving back because people don't know what to buy for people with cancer. And so this way it solves a problem. It makes someone feel special, and the money gets donated. So it's a win all around.
It's so beautiful what you're doing. This initiative is really quite overwhelming when I think about how important it is to have these kinds of services. I think you already answered the question around what's the goal of creating these packages. So I'm kind of going to go off script and ask you a little bit about what is the reaction when people are calling you. They're calling you, they may be the person who is caretaking someone who has cancer, or someone who wants to do something for somebody who's a caregiver. What's that conversation like?
The majority of the time, people just kind of want to know, which package to buy, what does one have versus another. And the packages, every single item in those packages are items that I use and that have helped me. So, I want it to be kind of a one-stop shop. And so there's usually not so much conversation before people ask my opinion. I tell them which one I would recommend. And it's usually the after, whether it's the recipient of the gift or the person who purchased it. I get so many emails and messages on Instagram and all that kind of stuff. Just people telling me like, wow, the gift was everything we needed. It hit, it checked off every box. People are really just so happy with the packages, and it warmed my heart. Each message brings tears to my eyes.
I'm sure. Talking with cancer survivor Joy Rogers. Joy, the texts are coming in, including the costs of some of these packages, what I'll get to in a second. Just have to read this one to you. She is so inspirational and captivating. She has so much to offer. And so this obviously is resonating with a lot of people, Joy. And we want to thank you for coming on a Saturday afternoon to tell us about this. So very quickly, we are running out of time. We've got about 30 seconds, a minute left. Can you, you mentioned 4 or 5 packages. What's the general costs?
So they go anywhere from $30 to $60, and then the accessories are all kind of, let's say between $10 and $25.
Good. And I was on with my wife. You have a wonderful website, by the way, which we'll get to in a second.
Thank you.
And they are, I think, like you say, this isn't a huge profit-making adventure. This is a way of giving back, and you've kept prices very, very reasonable for and giving people great ideas about what do you do giving gifts to caregivers or those going through treatment or in recovery. So we do have to wrap up, Joy. We want to thank you coming on the air. So before you go, how can our listeners get a hold of some of your joyful packages?
So I have a website, which is www.joyfulpackages.ca, or you can find me on social media at Joyful Packages. So it's JoyfulPackages.
Well, you are very inspirational, Joy.
Thank you.
And we want to thank you very much. That's Joy Rogers, cancer survivor and owner of Joyful Packages.
Thank you guys
All right,
so much.
Thank you, Joy. All right, Corey, what do we have coming up on the second half of the show?
Coming up after the news, seniors and technology. We're going to be talking about how technology is helping seniors and their families live healthier, safer, and happier lives.